Could be heavy at times, will move in here, and turning fresher as a result, 20 or 21 Celsius. In the east, holding on to the heat and humidity, highs of 25 or 26. Through the evening, thunderstorms move away, then this band of rain pushes north and east across the UK. Behind it, fresher conditions following, mixture of clear skies and scattered showers. So a much more comfortable night for sleeping Friday night into Saturday morning. Towns and cities holding up in double figures, but slipping into single figures in the countryside. So a bright start to Saturday morning, but there will be a mixture of showers, some of these heavy. Showers most frequent across western areas through the day. The east holding on to the driest and brightest weather, but there will be some showers here too. Perhaps some longer spells of rain moving into Northern Ireland later on in the day. And also with this low pressure nearby, we will see increasing winds, particularly through the Irish Sea, some gales developing towards Northern Ireland and western Scotland. And a fresher feeling day for all. Temperatures high teens to low 20s, perhaps 23 to 25 across southeast England. And that remains so for the weekend. We're looking at a mixture of sunny spells and showers, some of these heavy at times, and temperatures overall around average for the time of year, reaching the low 20s.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV, on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere. We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
A very good morning to you. It's 9:30, which means this is The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood. Today, a show where we analyse the seismic defeat of not one, but two Conservative incumbent seats, both in Wakefield and in Tiverton and Honiton. We'll explore all of the details coming up after these headlines.
Thank you, Tom. Good morning. It's coming up to 9:32. I'm Rhiannon Jones in the GB newsroom. Boris Johnson says he will keep going despite suffering double by-election defeats. A warning, the following footage contains flashing images. In the Devon seat of Tiverton and Honiton, the Liberal Democrats overturned a 24,000 Tory majority, while Labour reclaimed the Redwall Wakefield seat in West Yorkshire. The Prime Minister, who's in Rwanda for a Commonwealth summit, suggested the results are mainly down to the cost of living crisis.
Absolutely true that we've had some tough by-election results, and they've been, I think, a reflection of a lot of things, but we've got to recognise that voters are going through a tough time at the moment, and I think that as a government I've got to listen to what people are saying, and in particular to the difficulties people are facing over the cost of living, which is, I think, for most people the number one issue.
Well, that is Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer says Wakefield is the birthplace of the next Labour government after his party's by-election victory.
The Tory party is absolutely imploding. They know they're out of ideas and they're out of touch. And if they had any decency, they'd get out the way for the next Labour government, because what happened here in Wakefield was people exercising their judgment on this Conservative government and voting no confidence.
Meanwhile, first thing this morning, Tory party co-chairman Oliver Dowden handed in his resignation following the double defeat. In an open letter to the Prime Minister, he wrote that somebody needed to take responsibility for the results. And train services are still disrupted today as the dispute over jobs, pay and conditions continues. More unions say they plan to ballot staff next week, making further strike action likely this summer. Meanwhile, the RMT plans to go ahead with their third in a week. That's tomorrow, as its members demand a pay rise in line with inflation. TV online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News. Now it's back to the briefing with Tom.
A very good morning to you. This is The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, live from Downing Street this morning as we analyse and digest the impact of these two seismic by-elections, both in Tiverton and in Wakefield, of course. Two losses of two Conservative seats. Now, we are mid-term. We are 2.5 years into a Conservative administration, or indeed, in another way to look at it, 12.5 years into a Conservative administration. It is ordinary for by-elections to be lost. The Conservatives have been pointing to the 15 by-elections that were lost between 1979 and 1992, with every subsequent general election being won. However, it must be said that no by-election that was lost in that period of time under Margaret Thatcher and John Major was lost by quite the margin of particularly Tiverton and Honiton. Well, we'll get to Tiverton and Honiton in just a second, but now let's turn our sights on Wakefield. Of course, that red wall constituency won by the Conservatives for the first time in generations in 2019, and now back in the hands of the Labour Party. Our reporter Anna Riley has more live from Wakefield.
Good morning, Tom. Yes, Labour has won the Wakefield by-elections with a majority of 4,925 votes, taking the traditional red wall seat back from the Conservatives. They gained this seat in 2019, and before that, Labour had been in power here for more than 80 years. There was a turnout of 39.1% in Wakefield. The Conservatives came in second place, followed by independent Akif Akbar in third and the Yorkshire Party in fourth. There were 15 candidates vying for the seat here, and in contrast to Honiton and Tiverton, the Lib Dems actually came in sixth place here in Wakefield. Speaking after the result, we're here now at Labour headquarters in Wakefield, where there are banners out, vote Labour, vote Simon Lightwood. And speaking after the result, he said, and he addressed the Prime Minister and said, "Boris Johnson, your contempt for this country is no longer tolerated. Your government has no ideas, no plan to address the big issues facing our country." And after the result was announced, he also said that Wakefield had started the next Labour government, saying, "We've definitely passed the test. We have demonstrated that Labour is ready to rebuild the red wall." We saw previous Labour voters who didn't vote for us last time come back, and some Conservative voters flip too. And speaking to people here on the streets of Wakefield, they said their main concern now is the cost of living, and they'd like to see more investment here in the city, get rid of the empty shops and put more into the high street. That's what they want to see now from Simon Lightwood.
Detail there, of course, from Wakefield. Really interesting there. The swing slightly less towards the Labour Party than the enormous swing in Tiverton and Honiton. Let's turn now to the southwest, Tiverton and Honiton. But before we visit Tiverton, let's get a wide-ranging view of everything that took place last night. I'm delighted to say we can be joined by Stephen Carlton-Woods, political commentator, of course. Stephen, thanks for joining us this morning on the briefing. I suppose there's an interesting element of tactical voting going on today. I'm interested by the words of David Frost, Lord Frost, the former cabinet minister, who pointed to the fact that actually it doesn't look like, through one set of lenses, that this is such a good result for the Labour Party or the Liberal Democrats. If you sort of conglomerate all the opposition parties and then factor in the lower turnouts, this is potentially a result of Conservatives staying home rather than a big surge in other parties.
Yeah, absolutely, Tom. We can see two very different by-elections here, and the writing was on the wall very early on. And also, I think it was quite a nasty campaign, really, because there was lots of literature going out to get rid of the Tories. So there, the thing with tactical voting comes in, because it was a case of there was a few organisations there sending leaflets out saying, telling people tactically to vote for either Labour or the Lib Dems to remove the Tories and make a statement. But two very different by-elections. We've got the Wakefield with only a very small turnout of 39%, and Labour only needed a 4% swing there. So very much expected. There was no big surprise there, and not really a resounding victory for Labour. I was listening to Keir Starmer's comments, and I don't think that's... I don't think he did himself any favours in what he said there. It wasn't really true to home. But the Tiverton one is a completely different ball game. The tactics there really shining through, and overturning a safe Tory majority to have then into a Lib Dem majority of 6,000. That is seismic, as you were saying earlier on. And I think that could be difficult to turn over in the next general election.
One of the really interesting points this morning is, of course, the resignation of Conservative Party Chairman Oliver Dowden. Now, I understand that the Prime Minister wasn't exactly expecting this resignation. It's a pretty unexpected event that's taken quite a few people by surprise this morning. What should we read into the resignation of Oliver Dowden?
Well, I was surprised as well when I turned the telly on this morning and heard that he'd resigned. I'd seen a few different news reports coming through on my phone, and I wasn't quite clear what the story was. Turned the TV on, and there it was. Oliver Dowden's resigned. And I probably would suggest that there may be one or two more resignations, but this is the time where the party needs to get behind the Prime Minister. A couple of weeks ago, there was a vote. The letters went in against the Prime Minister, and the party backed the Prime Minister. I think they should have waited till after the by-election, the Rebels, if they wanted to make a bigger impact, but they didn't. They did it early. Over 2 weeks ago, they had that vote for the Prime Minister. He's now safe for another year. It's now time for the party to get behind the Prime Minister and move forward rather than arguing with one another. And anyone in a position that feels as though they can't do the position, step aside and let someone go ahead, take the position that can take the party forward. And this squabbling's got to stop.
Yeah, it's really, really interesting there to see what might come after the resignation of Oliver Dowden, if any more cabinet ministers may be on the way too. I suppose we're on resignation watch. Just finally, in your view, should we expect any further cabinet resignations?
I'm not sure. No, I don't think any cabinet resignations. People are very precious about their careers, and so it's interesting to see how people, which horse they're backing at the moment. So I don't think there's going to be any change there at the top.
Well, I suppose it remains to be seen what happens, but it will be fascinating to watch throughout the day and indeed the weekend. Thanks so much for talking us through all of those issues. Let's turn now to Tiverton, as we teased just before that interview. Jeff Moody, our Southwest reporter, is there for us. Thanks for joining us, Jeff. I suppose this was a pretty seismic result, the biggest swing of any by-election in living memory.
Yes, absolutely. Seismic is certainly the word. For any hyperbole you want to mention, unprecedented too. Whatever your political persuasion, whichever way you vote, there's no getting away from the fact that this is a catastrophic result for Boris Johnson. It's worth pointing out it's also a catastrophic result for Labour that came second last time around in 2019, and by my calculations it looks as though they've lost their deposit this time round. So it's a bad result for them too, worth pointing that out. There is going to be a victory parade in Tiverton in about an hour and a half's time, so do join us for that. Sir Ed Davey, the leader of the Lib Dems, is in town, along with Britain's newest MP, Richard Ford. They're going to be doing a victory lap along the High Street shortly. People today are waking up mainly jubilant. People have been talking to me saying, you know, it's long overdue, they're glad it's happened, they're glad they voted the way they do. But some people obviously disappointed with the result, feeling that it's not the result that they wanted to happen. But whatever your political persuasion, whatever your beliefs, you cannot take it away from Richard Ford that he's run a very good campaign. He's a popular man. He's lived locally for many years. He's a very personable man, a former army major, and he's had a lot of people that have never voted away from the Conservatives, never turned their back on the Conservatives, that have done that not just because of Neil Parish and the whole murky way that he resigned, watching pornography in the House of Commons, all of that, not just because of Partygate and all of the ramifications that have happened as a result of that, but also because of Richard Ford himself. People are saying that, you know, he's a breath of fresh air, he's new to politics, but he's got people's backs. And that's the sense here that I'm getting from talking to people on the street, that Richard Ford has got people's backs. Well, we're hoping to be able to catch up with him a little later on when they do this big victory tour of Tiverton and Honiton a bit later on this morning.
It's so interesting looking at the way that the Liberal Democrats really were so insurgent in this seat. Looking at the last two elections, general elections in 2019 and 2017, it was actually the Labour Party that came second in this seat. In your view, Jeff, did the Labour Party just sort of throw in the towel at the start of this campaign?
They're saying they didn't. Liz Pole was the candidate, and she's saying that she fought a good campaign, but I have to say, I haven't seen it. As a reporter, when you come into a town just before a by-election, you get a sense as soon as you swing into town of the way that it's going, just by looking at the sheer amount of posters around the place. And I found Liberal Democrat posters everywhere, Conservative posters in places, but I couldn't find a Labour one. And I believe me, I looked, for the sake of balance, I looked high and low, but I couldn't find one. So that does give you a bit of a sign. Also, I put in a bid to interview Liz Pole, and we were told, no, she's not available for interviews, which again says something else, the fact that she wasn't out there trying to get that message across. So yes, it does seem that they didn't take it seriously enough, and that they didn't put their big guns behind it. There's been no sign of Sir Keir Starmer here, but Sir Ed Davey has been here quite a lot over recent weeks. So yes, it does certainly looks on the outside as though they didn't fight a good campaign here.
It's interesting, it seems like there may have been some sort of informal pact, if anything. Ed Davey, the leader of the Lib Dems, didn't visit Wakefield once. Sir Keir Starmer didn't visit Tiverton at all. It seems like there may well be some sort of cooperation, for want of a better word, between the Liberal Democrats and the Labour Party there. I wonder if there's anything more going on. This will be a really interesting moment in our politics to sort of continue to see as the years go on, if that cooperation increases between the Labour Party and the Liberal Democrats. But for now, Jeff Moody, thanks so much for bringing us that news down from Tiverton and Honiton. Really seismic result there. Really appreciate your time there on the ground. Well, let's turn now to some other news. Earlier, GB News Security and Home Affairs editor Mark White spoke to the policing minister, Kit Malthouse.
Silver BMW X3, showing insurance not held. Confirmed insurance not held.
On patrol with a team from Suffolk Constabulary Sentinel Unit in Ipswich Town Centre. They're tasked with combating drug crime. As they patrol, they're pulled over by a member of the public.
Just saw two lads in there exchanging something.
As they turn the vehicle, one of the two young men runs off. Another is grabbed on his bike.
I didn't see anything, man.
Yeah, okay, no, all right, okay.
With both eventually detained, officers find a bag of cannabis and arrest one of the men for dealing.
That is 120 quid worth of cannabis right there.
These units are being assisted by the recruitment of dozens of new officers across the force. On foot patrol in Ipswich, two of Suffolk's recent recruits.
Hiya, you all right?
Hannah Barrell and Megan Groom joined the force just over a year ago, part of the uplift of thousands of new officers across England and Wales. Hannah told us it's certainly a challenging job, but says it's absolutely the right move for her.
You're the one running to the danger, not away from it. So you do have to have a bit of a backbone in that sense. But you know you want to better your community and you want to help those vulnerable people that you might be going to.
Megan joined the force after studying criminology.
It's a tough job, physically and emotionally. Sometimes you do see some hard things that you sort of have to try and detach yourselves from. But I say to people, you don't, like myself, you don't know until you try.
So much going on! Can you just try and take a deep breath?
At police headquarters, the latest recruits are being put through challenging scenarios, watched over by the policing minister.
Wait, yeah, listen up, listen up. That car is sound out. Oh, sorry, you're under arrest.
For what? Although the police service has been hit by several recent scandals, Kit Malthouse believes the vast majority of the public still have confidence in the police, and many would be happy to make it their career.
We cannot take that trust for granted, and police leadership from top to bottom realise that you have to constantly reinforce those bonds of trust. So these extra 20,000 police officers that we're recruiting, making sure that a good proportion of them are out on the streets in uniform, building that bond every day. That's all part of the mix as well, and we cannot take that trust for granted. I know every police officer understands that.
These training scenarios are vital in preparing new recruits for what they might face out on the streets. Policing leaders say that those who opt for a career on the front line protecting the public, well, for them, this is a job like no other. The government has now added 13,500 new officers to police ranks across England and Wales. With a new recruitment drive launched this week, the policing minister says he's very confident they'll meet their overall target of 20,000 new officers by next March. Mark White, GB News, Ipswich.
Well, Mark White there, of course, looking at some very important issues, but there are other issues going on as well. It's not just domestic affairs, but international ones too. Today marks 4 months since Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine began, and I'm delighted to say that we can now talk to Kira Rudik, a Ukrainian MP who's currently in Brussels talking with senior members of the European Union about Ukraine's journey to perhaps become a member state of the European Union. Kira Rudik, thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us this morning. I suppose the first question is, how have your discussions been with those senior European leaders?
Hello, thank you so much for having me. Well, yesterday was really Christmas for my country. We were so absolutely happy that we received the candidacy status, and I'm absolutely grateful to leaders of the democratic countries, of European countries, who all voted for in favor of this decision. Yesterday, we had a Liberal Party leaders gathering that was led by Emmanuel Macron, and at this leaders gathering, we were discussing not only the candidacy status, but also challenges that European countries are facing and how Ukraine should be a part of the solution for those challenges. It will be a very hard autumn. We all understand that, in terms of food security, in terms of energy security, in terms of refugee status, and all military situation and war in Ukraine. So to get ready to tackle all those challenges, we need to work as a team. And yesterday, Ukraine was announced to be a part of the team. And this is incredibly important. It was a historic step for my country, but I think it was a historic step for Europe. Because instead of saying we are here and Ukraine is separate and we will be helping out, now they're saying we see you as a partner and we are ready to work as a partner. And so today, is the first working day where the fireworks are done, and now we are moving towards the looking for the solutions for the issues that I mentioned. So today, 4 months of full-scale war that we now know that will be a long one. The sanctions that European countries voted for that will decrease their reliance on Russian oil will start working at the end of 2022. So we are not even able to talk about when Russia will be weakened to the point that they would not be able to continue the invasion. So that's why we need to get ready to adapt to the situation as it is. And this means more support to Ukraine. It means more weapons to Ukraine, that we will be able to keep Russian forces away. And this means working towards a longer strategy on how, in this new world that looks so different, how all survive and how we would all make sure that our citizens live the best of their lives. You know, Emmanuel Macron yesterday said a very important thing. He said that the world that we used to, it's gone. And we need to adapt to the new one that's changing rapidly every single day. And there are challenges that are not being tackled and being forgotten, but they are still here. And this is why we, as political leaders of our countries, we need to make sure that we have a plan, and not on September the 1st, when all the issues will be already here, but right now, when we still have a little bit of time to make sure that we all come as one.
It's so interesting seeing what words have been said, the length of process that it can be from becoming a candidate country to becoming a member state. I suppose let's hope that some European leaders' words match their actions more so than has happened with sanctions to date. We wish you all the very best, Kira Rudik, for you, your country and your fight for freedom, and Slava Ukraini. Thanks very much for joining us. Well, that's it for the briefing today. Coming up, it's To The Point, but that's coming up after the weather.
Hello there, I'm Greg Dewhurst and welcome to your latest broadcast. It's going to start to turn more unsettled over the next 24 hours or so. There will be some sunshine, but some hefty showers too, and it will start to turn fresher, particularly in the west. And the reason for this is low pressure is going to start dominating our weather pattern. Blustery showers, fresher conditions starting to move in time for the weekend. So Friday morning, quite a cloudy start across much of the UK, 1 or 2 showers as well. Best of the sunshine will be across eastern parts of England, central, southern and eastern Scotland too. But by the afternoon, the heat and humidity here will spark a few hefty showers, some thunderstorms